So joining me, this is Danny Cardwell from ThoughtWrestler.blogspot.com. And I want to talk about politics and morality for a minute. Last week, the governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell's, saw a conclusion to his federal court case with guilty conviction. And in the blogosphere and on several political sites, if you read the comment section, there are people, on the opposite side of the aisle, liberal-leaning people that comment on these sites, and they're dancing on the proverbial grave of the former governor. And I think that, his scandal and his conviction and several other scandals and convictions over the last few years, Governor Rod Blagojevich, Jesse Jackson Jr., and you can even go back to, Tom DeLay and some of the other scandals that were infamous in the 80s, 90s, and on to today. There's this knee-jerk reaction that as soon as one person in one party gets convicted, the other party has to go out and use that person as some sort of piñata, and they beat the person up, and they tie every politician with the same political affiliation to that person's corruption as a way of labeling the whole party. And it's good politics, I guess. I mean, we live in a culture where our snapshot memory and our lack of thinking historically, that if you can just get a couple blurbs out, a couple news sites to run a couple convicted headlines and run the label of the party underneath them, you can tag a whole party that way. But it's the easier way to go. And when you think about corruption, and you think about graft and the power that money and influence has over our political process, you understand that everyone is susceptible to those things. The governor's conviction is no more an indictment on the GOP than Rod Blagojevich's conviction is on the Democratic Party, though they're symptoms of a greater problem, and it has nothing to do with politics in many ways. All of us, if we're honest with ourselves, are susceptible to wanting more. We're susceptible to wanting to cut corners, to take the easy way out, to maybe take the advantage in this life. And for some people, they can skate their whole life and do it. You cut a corner here, cut one there, you keep your reputation intact, no one thinks the difference. But what happens is when greed gets involved and you put yourself at risk by taking greater and greater chances. In many ways, the mentality of a drug dealer is no different than the mentality of some of these politicians. And this isn't to label all politicians. But what I'm saying is that the moment that you chase power, the moment you chase money, there's never enough of it. And the risk that you're willing to take to acquire more of it, the longer you're in the game, the easier it is to make the bigger and the bigger risks. You think about someone like the governor. The governor had access to wealth. He was considered a strong frontrunner at one time for the GOP's nomination for presidency. He was on a short list of candidates for the vice presidency, and his political future looked like it was in front of him. On top of that, you take all of the ties that he had made with his political future, with his political past, and how he could have tied that into economic opportunities in the future, and it seemed like he was well on his way to a cushy retirement and enjoying his life. But it's the thing about corruption and greed, and there's never enough. I think about my personal wealth, my personal life. There are people that if they woke up with my bank account, they would probably wonder who was embezzling from them, and then maybe kill themselves. I don't know. But the point is that all of us are susceptible to this level of greed, and just because someone has what appears to be it all, doesn't mean that that's all that they want. It doesn't mean that they're happy with what they have, and it doesn't mean that they're not trying to get more. And any party is guilty of that. This sophomoric idea that one party is holier than the other has almost got to go. It's part of the problem in a way. Our politics have become so divided that we use any means necessary to dehumanize our political opponents. And in doing so, we take the easier route. just because someone has a political affiliation similar to yours doesn't mean that you are right or they are right. Ultimately, it comes down to the arguments. And there are several situations where both of the major political parties are leaning in the right side or in the right direction of progress when it comes to the issues our country face. But that's what's important. The issues, the arguments for the issues, stating your case, moving forward with a linear progression, and trying to solve problems. Just because someone has a D or an R beside their name doesn't necessarily make them right or wrong. And the whole vilification of groups of people, it's a tactic used so that no one even has to consider what comes out of their mouth. You're automatically disqualified before you say anything. The idea that all Republicans are racist, or the idea that all Democrats are baby murderers. I mean, those are things that pass for political talk in our country right now. And we've hit a stall. We haven't moved forward. And the lack of quality politicians is a clear-cut sign of that. You know, anybody with a reality show can be considered a serious contender for high office. And that's a sign of the direction that we've gone in. It's a sign of the decline of our civilization. And I hate to be so drastic with that, but you know, the idea that publicness is something that shouldn't be taken serious is a relatively new thing. And in my lifetime, I couldn't imagine the idea that, you know, a reality TV star would have been considered, you know, vice presidential material. And yet that's the world we live in. I think that before I die, if I'm blessed to live a long life, I'll probably see, you know, a reality star being a politician. And I'm not discounting, you know, actors that have crossed over, you know, Ronald Reagan, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, Clint Eastwood was a politician. I mean, I'm not saying that these guys didn't use their fame as a springboard to elevate their politics. What I'm saying is that there's a complete difference between someone being famous for being famous and deciding to take that to get into politics than someone having ideas and using whatever platform they have to disseminate those ideas. We have moved in a direction that's frightening in a way. The idea that either one of these truncated parties has a monopoly on virtue, honesty, or morality is something that's akin to, you know, an adult believing in pro wrestling. I mean, at some point you have to get out of the fantasy land. You have to wake up. You have to understand that these are human beings. And when I hear religious people making metaphysical claims about the value of a politician based on party affiliation, that really makes me, it irks me a little bit, because here you have someone that is claimed to be a religious person who is going against the fallibility in all of us, the fact that all of us were born in sin, and you're saying, well, this person is fallible, this person was born in sin, but because they have this letter by their name, clearly they're on the side of righteousness and decency. And you know, that's just something that I think we need to get away from. All of us are human. These politicians that you see on TV are no better or no worse than you. And the best person you know in your life is capable of doing something horrible. And the worst person you've ever been around in your life is capable of doing something heroic and brave. And that's my thoughts on this. Whatever happens with the governor's case as he's sentenced, it will be something between his family, the judge, and how they get through it. But, you know, to throw the governor, the former governor, under the bus as somehow being indicative of his party is just a complete fallacy. You know, both parties have had their share of corruptions and scandals, and I rage against both parties. So this isn't a defense of the GOP or of the Democratic Party. This is just the reality that we live with. Both parties are full of people that have taken advantage. Both parties are full of people that, you know, have the best intentions of this country at heart. And, you know, the telltale sign of a good politician is being able to use your vision and use the people around you to do what's best for those that are all around us, all of us. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for supporting the blog, thoughtwrestler.blogspot.com. Peace.